Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. DM Geezer Jim here. Continuing along in our dungeon mastering series here. My previous episode was about adventure hooks, um, and where they were listed and how to find them and kind of how to use them. And it was a little bit ambiguous, but honestly, they're not that hard as long as kind of that was the summation of my last episode is as long as you're preparing, as long as you're reading through the stories, reading through the adventure itself, you'll be able to identify the adventure hooks through the content and present them to your party in such a way that they find them engaging. The second part of that is tying in the character's backstory with your adventure hooks and with your campaigns. Now, this is a little bit thicker of a subject, so first and foremost, as usual, thank you for joining me. Feel free to put comments, questions, anything else in leave comments, ask questions, anything. I want to hear back. I want to engage. I want this to be a learning process for you guys that are watching and me. There might be things that I'm missing. There might be things that you need more explanations on. I'm happy to try to to do that. The better I'm able to teach it, the better I'm able to execute it. That's kind of the concept behind it. So yeah, you got to be able to understand something before you teach it, right? Anyway, backstories. Backstories are a bigger deal now in modern Dungeons and Dragons than they were in the classics. Let's just first and foremost get that out of the way. Players will come in with multiple levels of backstory creation as they come to your table. Over the course of your DMing career, you'll have the 3-page short story, you'll have the 10-page novel, you'll have the I was a guard and I got bored and I want to be an adventurer, and you'll have the whole spectrum in there. So how do you tie the backstory in with adventure hooks to engage your players into the campaign a little bit more? First and foremost, I want to talk about when we're getting into looking at a backstory. This is me talking as a DM. I run by 3 simple rules for my players. Number 1, make sure that your backstory makes sense for your level, for your starting point in that world. Okay, your players coming to the table should at level 1 should not have killed a dragon and stolen the gem from the horde and the dragon's big brothers coming to hunt them down. That's not a viable level 1 story. As fun as it sounds, as cool as it sounds, dissuade your players from doing that, from the simple fact that it needs to make sense. If you want this to be founded in consistent and sustainable, if you want a sustainable adventure and a sustainable campaign and setting, you gotta keep things within bounded accuracy is the best term to use. That's what we use to talk about the rules for 5th edition. Everything is based on a bounded accuracy. Your world should be based on a bounded accuracy, if for lack of better term. This is why there's a power curve. This is why there's poor. This is why there's rich. This is why they're strong. This is why they're weak. And your player characters' backstories should fall into that gap. So my first rule is make sure the player character's backstory makes sense for their level, for their starting point. They shouldn't have traveled 4,000 miles to get to the start of this adventure at level 1. Second thing is, make sure that the character's backstory isn't giving them material advantage in the campaign, something that would be available to them that's not available to the other party members. Now, these, like I said, these are just base rules. We'll get into exceptions here in a second. Okay. My level 1 wizard's aunt hangs out with Morden Kanan, so I know if I get in a pinch, I'll just call my Aunt Bessie, who can borrow. You don't want to play with that. As much as it sounds fun to have names and access to these kind of things within the character's backstory, you want to make sure that it's not giving them an undue advantage. It's not giving them the pocket MacGuffin that can, again, give them an advantage over one of the other players who may not be as creative, or be really kind of circumvent some of the problems that an adventuring party will have just because of who they know. Okay. Third rule I always try to follow and impart on my players is your backstory cannot be built to become the center point of the campaign. If for example, we're playing Descent into Avernus, okay? Oh, well, I'm going to be the descendant of one of Zariel's generals, so I can... No, 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 no. that can't necessarily be an issue because that can become the overriding theme of the campaign. If a character's backstory is written in such a way that it can overpower the story, the region, the adventure that you have planned, be willing to say no and work with them to kind of pull it off to the margins. It can be the source for something, but it can't be the central plot, if that makes sense to you. So, keeping those three rules in mind, as long as your player characters are making something that makes sense for the level that they're starting, making something that, has some flavor, has some background, has some relation, but it's not giving them the secret treasure of 1,000 gold and my uncle locked himself away in a tower because Black Razor tried to take him over. He said, "When I'm old enough, I could come get it." You don't want that. You don't want that. Even if your players think they want that, they'll only want it once or twice, and then it kind of loses its appeal. Obviously, the third thing is you don't want to compete with a player character's story to run a campaign, um, especially early on. Now, I did talk about that we'd have some exceptions to those rules. Exception to rule number one is if the party all knows each other, if the party's starting in a different level, if the party's coming from a different region into a new region, they have a little bit more of a play. For example, you're going into Planescape. You don't want everyone necessarily born in Sigil and having to know all of this stuff about Sigil, so they could have had some adventures prior to them showing up. For example, that's an exception that breaks the rules. Settings can and campaigns can determine allowing them for some fantastical beginning because it's not going to have an impact moving forward. The second thing, if you need to make sure that your players have access to lore, knowledge, potential resources, resurrections, then you can violate rule number two as long as everyone in the party has access to something similar. So that might create a situation where you have to work with some of your less creative folks for them to develop a good fitting backstory that supports having access to resources they wouldn't otherwise have, that dovetails with the rest of the group. A little more effort involved in breaking rule two. Rule three can certainly be broken in a very collaborative, cooperative sort of an adventure. That rule breaking kind of works best for a well-formed group of friends, something that has a good cohesion, is able to help each other move a story forward. Because if you go ahead and break rule three, then by default, one of the players is going to be the main character of the story most of the time, and the remainder of the party is kind of the support cast. You'll be able to flop here and there and here and there, but if my story is the center of the campaign, by default, everyone else's stories are secondary. So if everyone's cool with it, and you're able to build around that as you get more skill and practice, then you can break rule three. Okay, so blah, 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 all of that's out the way. Your player characters have come. We're playing Lost Mines of Phandelver. As I've stated a couple times, I'm keeping the focus on using this module for our basis of research, of preparation, of knowledge, because everyone has access to it. Plain and simple, you can go to D&D Beyond, look at this thing for free, and follow right along, and see with your own eyes what I'm describing. So it's a good starter module. It really is. It gives you enough to work with, enough to get started. And as the series continues, we'll probably pull apart a couple other books, being what they may, just to give you different printed examples. So let's pop over to Adventure Hook's Forgotten Realms, setting all this. This is what's going to be important for you as a dungeon master to have prior to the creation of your characters' backstories. Okay, this will help you guide them along with where they're from. What town are you from? I'm from New York. New York doesn't exist in the Forgotten Realms, bro. Give me something else. So knowing where your campaign is set is going to have a direct impact on tying their backstory in with an adventure hook. Okay? One of the things that a lot of us, will be facing is the player that wants to come from the starting town of the adventure. If you want to handle that, that's fine. For me, that's breaking rules 2. Definitely rule 2, probably rule 1. They are going to have access to additional resources through familiarity that the party otherwise wouldn't have. Now, the flip side of that, breaking that rule, is if the players are willing to learn about that region and know about that geographic area, their starting town, as if they were residents, then you allow it because honestly, they'll be able to engage in the subject matter better. This is our town. This isn't a place that we got sent on an adventure. But you're going to have to increase your prep work. You're going to have to know a lot more of the non player characters if your party is living in this town. So, if that kind of makes sense, where their party is from in their backstories can have an impact on how you're preparing your hooks. The further away they are from the adventure, the more of a reason they needed to have in their story to travel, to bite the first hook, so to speak. The closer they are to the region of the adventure natively, the more knowledge they should have of the geography and the area. So there's a balance there. And you can definitely have a mix of the two, of the five between the party. These are just examples of how a player's backstory is going to affect how you prepare the adventure, how do you integrate them into the adventure, and how you prepare the hooks to tie it into them. Okay, so let's just start really super simple here. We're in the Forgotten Realms. We know we're in the Forgotten Realms. This is where Phandelver takes place. We're leaving Neverwinter. I want to be the rogue. Started getting better at pickpocketing, got a little bit better with my skills, made a couple enemies, need to get out of town for a little while to let things die down. So I'm going to take this job and head down there and see what happens. Nice simple backstory, 1-2 sentences, makes perfect sense for a young / low level rogue, ran afoul of the wrong group, needs to bail out of town, ties directly into the story, leaves it perfectly ambiguous moving forward. That's zero effort inclusion. What's your family name? It doesn't matter. Unless your player gives you a family name, then make sure you take a note of that. Maybe there's a long lost cousin or a long lost uncle living in the town that you need to go to that you can use. So knowing your players' backstories as far as their familial history can help you plant hooks and clues and little devices to move your party along certain paths. Absolutely can. Where they're from, what was their prior job, is going to affect how much money they have when they start the campaign. Nobles, a lot of, I want to be the second son of the noble family who has to go out and find his own way in the world. But to prove myself, I don't want to use any of the family wealth. I'm going to go out and do my own thing and be my own thing and come home with my own wealth and power, my own name, and then I'll earn the family title. Legitimate start, legitimate backstory, very prototypical. It's. I'm going to do an editorial comment here. Don't get upset with your players for using something that is stereotypical, that is trope, that is standard. We've got a lot of literature between then and now. There's not a whole hell of a lot left. It's perfectly fine because it's normal. Your adventurers are adventurers, but they have normal lives. So having a backstory steeped in something as I hate to say simple, but as simple as a family member's death or someone disappearing and you're on a search to find them, et cetera, et cetera. Those are perfectly acceptable parts of a backstory that you can incorporate moving forward. The kidnap stuff can be difficult because the expectation is somewhere along the line, you're going to need to make sure that they get to resolve that plot point in their story. But it's not so difficult to where you need to say no, okay? Most of your bad guys, most of your long-term stories have someone being taken prisoner, have someone having a keep or a dungeon. So it's a really easy thing to seed that hook of the missing sister through a couple of rumors as the party progresses along. And those suddenly serve as very, very driving hooks. They can almost directly railroad at that point. You've heard from my sister? Where? So using that as an example of a backstory can give you a really easy hook that you just throw out there whenever you need to reel the party into a certain point. The plus side is very engaging. The downside is, depending on where you do it, it can resolve that player's storyline pretty early. And, maybe they're like, well, I really don't have reason to be adventuring anymore. I found my sister. So if you drag it out and, you just missed the slaver caravan, they're headed, we're not sure where, they're supposed to send us a letter next time they get camped out, okay, well, you saved yourself till the next encounter. But if you drag that out too far, it then becomes an overriding theme of your campaign, potentially a distraction or a break of story logic to get it resolved later. Those are the kind of things that you want to think about. It's really easy when when you're working with your players to think tactically, think in the moment. This is the coolest thing ever in the moment of right now. This story is going to work really well with no matter what we're going to do. I need to change my background. That looks good. I'm going to change, I'll do that next video. But, just kind of talking about making sure that what sounds really freaking badass in the moment is sustainable over the course of a campaign is strategic thinking. So you definitely want to make sure that as you're adjusting things, as you're working with your party on their backstories, if it's the coolest thing in the moment now, is it going to become a problem later? Is it something that you'll be able to plan around and resolve? I murdered the mayor of the town I came from. I'm on the run. There's going to be people looking for you. So are you as a DM willing to allow that to happen in the backstory, which is, I'm not saying no. I'm saying that's the second stage. In the moment, I ran from my tribe. I got in a fight with the chief's son. I'm a barbarian. I went into bloodlust mode and I accidentally killed him instead of submitting him, and I had to leave in shame. And, well, that's the king's son. I promise you they're going to be hunting your ass down, right? Sounds fun, sounds cool. That's a great backstory. As a dungeon master, now I've got to look at how did he get away? How did they get away? How far away are their tribe? You can work with your player, all of this. These are just the considerations. Is that going to have an impact? Then you can say, yes, I want to have someone, a group of bounty hunters or someone else. Your vision quest is to go hunt down the betrayer of the tribe. So there's a string of other people from their tribe that attacked them over the course of the campaign. That can be a fun way to include it without having it be an overriding thing. Once you've finished your great quest and you go home and you prove yourself the man of hero and the man of valor, then all of this stuff ends. But for now, you're defending yourself from these tribal attacks while you're doing your thing. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And therein lies the rub. There is no tried and true technical written manual that tells you point A, point B, point C, how to how to integrate a player's backstory into your campaign and provide hooks. There's suggestions. It's just one of those things that you learn through time. But what I'm, over the course of this video, I'm using simple examples to hopefully drive you into thinking, this is the tactical. What if my character comes from this? What is the strategic? What is the long-term impact aspect and availability of that storyline? This is where I'm going to pause and say, if you got the character that doesn't care about the backstory, I'm just a guard. I've been in the army for 2 years. This sucks. I want to do something with my life. So I left the city watch to move forward. Then you're done. You're good, man. They just want adventure. They just want to be an adventurer. They don't need anything else. That player is doing you a favor because you don't have to worry about anything. They're there for the moment. I'm here for the now and I'm here for the future. I'm not worried about my past. I left my past behind me. So never dissuade those players. If you're fortunate enough to have a couple people at your table that are willing to go that simple and smooth with their backstory, thank them. Not in an embarrassing, well, privately thank them or silently thank them maybe. You don't want to call out the other guys because they're saving you effort, they're saving you some time, and they're telling you right here, I'm here for what we're about to play. I'm not here to write my own story. I'm here to enjoy the experience moving forward with the group. The future is my story. So that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. Now, if they want one, but they don't know how, a creativity thing, that's a process you work through with your player stage by stage. While we're playing in the Forgotten Realms, we're in Phandalin. Let's say you came from Leyland, town from the south. Okay, that's fine. What were you? Well, my background is as an outlander, so you were probably a hunter. So maybe you're a hunter-trapper out there and something happened to your hunting partner. You got sad. You felt like, life's short. I need to go see the world, and you moved on. Okay, fine. So yeah, there you give it. So you have the potential to give them some ties if they want them later. You've given them a solid foundation in the world, Here, I'm going to switch real quick. We're going to go over to sources. Game rules, backgrounds. This might be an entertaining way to go through how do I incorporate a backstory into Lost Mines of Phandelver. Okay, that's the module we're still looking at. I'm not changing off of anything. Out of character, some of these backgrounds you're not going to have access, or out of character. I'm so used to talking in D&D terms. My God, um, the some of the backgrounds that are listed here are not going to necessarily be available to you outside of basic or player handbook. Some of them came along with the adventure, so keep that in mind. The first thing I'm going to tell you is almost every player is going to pick a background because they gain proficiencies. Okay? Focus on making sure their backstory makes sense with their background. Okay? You took the proficiencies of a criminal spy, but your mom is X, Y, or Z and from a noble guild. How does that happen? And let them help you through that. Don't say no, but use that to prompt conversations about their backstory. Okay? So tying in the backstory, like I said, we'll just kind of start at the beginning real quick. Acolyte's nice and easy. That's going to be for your cleric, for your priest, for something like that. Acolyte, either the Baldur's Gate or the regular version. Most of the time, your clerics are going to be there either A, because they feel guilty because your party doesn't have a healer, so they really don't care about their backstory, or B, because they have a nice tragic sort of reclamation backstory or revolution backstory or something. So an acolyte is pretty easy. A player character that's running a cleric is pretty easy because their character is kind of driven by their alignment and their devotion to their deity. Acolytes kind of take care of themselves through the character manifesting as a cleric or a druid. Most time druids won't take acolyte though. So, what church are you from? Okay, the temple of Ilmater in Neverwinter wants you to go forward and do A, B, C. Suffer for the weak. We know there's poor and destitute to the south. The Lord's Alliance in Waterdeep hasn't been able to do anything. So you're an acolyte. You're going in. You're simply traveling with this caravan because it's the most convenient way to get yourself south. So your acolyte is instantaneously hooked by the same thing everyone else is. Remembering Lost Mines, taking a step back to last video. What is the adventure hook? The adventure hook is we're playing D&D. Okay. You don't have a lot of pressure on you day one with Lost Mines of Phandelver with your first group to come up with all of the adventure hooks. Day one is we want to adventure. We want to play D&D. So your players are going to be more inclined to build stories that support that. Okay? Archaeologist, Tomb of Annihilation, social history, survival, social exploration. The geeky wizard that wants to go out and find traces of Netherese magic throughout the course of their studies. Very easy to hook in here because, I mean, if you remember Lost Mines of Phandelver, you may not remember, but I was mentioning a Red Wizard of Thay that was doing something similar in the town of Coneybury. You have precedence for that. You have a hook right there. There's a competing wizards guild that's sending their representatives over here, find out what they're up to. That can be the personal hook for your archaeologist. Could be the same hook for any of your mage stuff. Athlete, that's going to be almost all of your freaking fighters. Almost all of your melee classes are going to take athletics, acrobatics, so on and so forth. That doesn't necessarily have to play into a backstory, honestly. That's a mechanical thing. We're under the assumption that if you're a fighter, if you're a monk, if you're a paladin, you're already kind of athletic. So that doesn't necessarily go. And I'm going to skip over the Azorius, the Burrows, some of the less standard. I'll skip over the non-player handbook ones. How's that sound? Charlatan. The fake, the snake oil salesman, the false prophet. That one's a little challenging for a level 1 character because odds are you had some shit go down, or you're about to have some, excuse my language, stuff go down based on your background. You've always had a way with people. You know what makes them tick. You can tease their heart's desires out, and you can read them like your children's books. It's a useful talent and one that you're perfectly willing to use for your advantage, okay? Charlatan is, like I said, a snake oil salesman, a con man. Think of it that way. Now, deception, sleight of hand, I think that should be insight. Doesn't matter. What is a charlatan doing? Getting out of town, finding a new grift, any of that stuff, any of the reasons but in their background to drive them away from their home city or to move them into new territory, find some new prey. You know, a charlatan's not a good person. They're a deceptive person who preys on the insecurities of others. So, you know, the character that's running a charlatan background is probably going to be a little shady, a little bit sneaky, and probably has some shadows in their backstory that you can pop up later to either redirect the players or to give them additional activities. The incorporation of their backstory is simple. I need to get out of town for this adventure hook. Okay? Let's cruise down to the next one. Basic rule. Criminal spy, same thing. It can be an active contract. It could be I'm running from. It could be I'm a new dude in the world and I have to go prove myself before I can join the guild. Whatever the reason is, it's pretty easy to hook into Lost Mines of Phandelver. Criminal spy is pretty easy, and a criminal or spy-based backstory is really easy to incorporate into any setting in any campaign. The more tragic the backstory, the more convoluted their reason for fleeing or the MacGuffin that they have to get as part of their personal story, the more challenging that the more, I won't say challenging, the more you need to kind of plan and prep to have that resolved, similar to the kidnapping we were talking about earlier. Entertainers, going to be a lot of bards, probably maybe a rogue. Acrobats, performance, being able to play their instruments well. I mean, that's tried and true. If you're a bard, you're by default an entertainer, so you don't need as much story there. But if your acrobat thief wanted to come from a background of an entertainer from a circus, that's where that comes in. Make sure it makes sense. Easy to use. How to use it moving forward as a hook. If they rely, this is a little more nuanced. As an example of nuance, this works for even someone's got a big backstory or came in no backstory. If your player is using performance a lot, succeeding a lot, using persuasion a lot, succeeding a lot as an entertainer, they'll be building themselves a reputation. So maybe you keep track of how often they're succeeding. If they're sitting at like an 80% success chance, you have that, wow, a lot of people have heard of you. Hey, Chief Mayor ABC wants you to come to town XYZ and perform. We're willing to pay extra. Built-in hook for you to move the party where you need to move them anytime in the campaign based on the performance and engagement of someone that's playing as an entertainer. So that's looking at tactical, thinking strategically. If they're doing really good at it, people are going to hear about it. If people hear about it, they're going to want them. I can then, as a dungeon master, use that as a impetus that plays on the character's story to move them where I need them to be in the campaign. That's a perfect example of using a backstory to tie in with a hook, or a backstory providing you a hook. And that's a kind of like I said, I guess you could say a location-based hook. I need them to go here, so I'm going to use that. I'm getting low on coffee. Oh, that's bad. My voice is going yucky. Folk hero, Robin Hood-esque. The guy that stands up to the man and shakes their fist and says no. The guy that leads the strikes. The guy that goes into the woods and gets back the farmer's kid from the goblins when no one else would. That's your folk hero. By definition, someone that's going to use a folk hero is probably going to have a lot of their own backstory. That can be one of those challenging things at lower levels that builds up, similar to the entertainer. Yeah, we heard of you, da da da. The stories, I guess the stories are true. Folk hero is kind of it's going to be built, you're going to have your own built-in hooks with that one. Because odds are, if your player's using folk hero, either A, it's going to be a blank slate, they just wanted the skills, or B, it's because they have a story that goes along with it. So as long as their story from point A, from our first 3 rules, fits your world, then a folk hero is just as easy to, I hate to use the term manipulate, but just as easy to plan adventure hooks for, to manipulate a folk hero as much as anything else. Gladiator's a little thicker because for a level 1 fighter, when you kill 5 skeletons, you're level 2 solo. So if you've been in the gladiator rings for the first 5 years of your life, how are you only a level 1 fighter? So make sure you're working with the player to make them understand that they couldn't be I fought for my freedom. I won the tournament of the year, and I got to go out the front door as a level 1 fighter. This is one of those backgrounds that can clash with backstory. This is one of the backgrounds that can feed into a backstory that can clash with how are you just level 1 and how did you get here. Pay attention to that. But similar to the other ones, this can set up a nemesis. Say you're starting at level 3 or 4, and this gladiator makes perfect sense then. So hooks can be a nemesis, someone that they defeated in the ring later, that's part of the BBEG, part of the bad guy organization. You can propel them from hearing that or for having that challenge show up there. Very easy to hook them in on that. Or the family of someone that they slain, the brother, sister, or whatever of someone they still, or someone that lost their entire fortune betting on someone that the gladiator killed. Well, the next page, I'm killing that fool. You have room. The challenge is starting at level 1 with that kind of stuff. Higher level, the gladiator background and backstory definitely gives you a lot of hooks, a lot of ways to latch your party into it, latch that player into the story. Okay? Hermit, Player's Handbook. The hardest part about a hermit is, why did you decide to give up a hermit lifestyle and travel with 4 people across the realms and deal with all of the people that you've been avoiding your whole life? You can use hermit, maybe twisted into forest kid, street kid, but there's already Urkin that covers that. So hermit's another one that's probably better. The stats are really good, or excuse me, the skills are really good. Your player's probably going to come with a story. Why are they a hermit? And it's up to you at that point to incorporate that work with them to make sure that they've come in. Downside of being a hermit is there really aren't a lot of long-term strategic ties that you can use as hooks for later. They're a hermit. They don't like people. They don't like civilization or society. They're living alone. They're not going to have any social connections or really moral connections that you can pull up as hooks later. So hermit is a little bit hard to hook in by proxy and definition of who they are. Expect a little bit of a challenge there, but again, the player's going with the flow already, because why are you a hermit but an adventurer? Once they explain that away, then you're going with the flow, so you don't have to worry about the hooks with their backstory. We're going to scroll on down. Where's my next one? Player's Handbook. Knight. Same thing. Level 1 Knight. Let's pop this sucker open here. Retainers. You have the service of 3 retainers loyal to your family, attendants or messengers, or a major domo. Commoners who can perform mundane tasks that do not fight, will not follow you into dangerous situations, and leave if they're endangered or abused. First problem with the Knight background. They get 3 non-player characters that you have to control, and you have to run the personality for and all of that. This is a challenging one. This is not a level 1 start point. A Knight background as written can be a little bit overpowering in your campaign as far as that player having an outsized presence due to their backstory. Furthermore, a Knight traveling with their party must be on some sort of major quest. And if you're going to line it with the end goal for your party, the end goal for the campaign, great. You don't have to do a whole lot more heavy lifting. But if they're on some personal, specific quest of redemption or whatever, that's something you'll have to plan for to handle, include, and resolve along the way in the campaign. Okay? Knights are tricky. We all know knights are very well armed, very powerful, trained fighters. Well armed, very powerful, and level 1 don't necessarily well armed, powerful, well trained at level 1 just don't necessarily mix. So, keep that one in mind. Never be afraid to use logic to an extent when you're talking with your players. Obviously, there's the argument that D&D has no logic. You can't use logic. You absolutely can. And you kind of need to in certain situations. If you're establishing a society, a setting in a world, there has to be some sort of logical progression of poverty to wealth, of weakness to power. So make sure that you're bringing that up if someone wants to use a knight. Make sure you're planning for that if you allow it. Kind of leads us into the noble. Same kind of challenges that you're going to face with a noble background there. Is this player's noble family so powerful that they're going to have an outsized access to resources? Or if resources is not always money. As a matter of fact, honestly, in Dungeons and Dragons, as you start playing the game, as you start administering the game, the largest resource that your players will get are contacts. Whether they realize it or not, who they know and who they can access is more important than the weapon they're wielding in the strategic view. If you plan for the strategic view, if you don't, then a lot of this doesn't really matter. And this is where I'll pause for a second and say it takes practice, it takes time, it takes repetition. Don't expect to have a good handle on all of this stuff the first session. That's why I suggest using Lost Minds and keeping it very simple. That's why we're going through these basics to give you ideas. Tie your players' backstories in with their background for the first couple characters. That will help you build out the world and the hooks to support that. Okay. Got to remind myself once, every once in a while. This is intro to DMing, a how to DM thing, new player centered. So keep that in mind as a dungeon master. You can directly and should directly work with your players based on their backgrounds and what they want to do to build a backstory that fits your setting and gives you opportunities to include their backstory in the game. If you have the guy that shows up with the 11-page novel, says, read this, and you actually read it out of respect and say, hey, can we do this? No, 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 no. That's my story. That's my red flag to say, sorry, we're not here to play your novel. We're here to play a collaborative group. Bring another character. Maybe we can use that in a different campaign that it fits. There's a polite way to handle it. You're not kicking them from the table. You're just saying, obviously that story means a lot to you tied to that character. I don't think I can support that and support the rest of the group's story. How about you try a different character? And just leave it at that, man. You're not saying your story is too overpowered. You're taking responsibility of, I don't know that I have the skill at this point to do your story justice and include everyone's gameplay. This is a situation where definitely as a dungeon master, it's okay to say no, and it's definitely okay to say no and work with your players to establish their backstory. So anyway, noble, problem, position of privilege, should have access to wealth, should have a network of personalities, non-player characters, whatever their noble family was involved in. Now you can make it really simple and say, my noble family's disgraced and I'm out here to redeem it, which absolves a lot of the worry for you as the dungeon master to plan for. If it's a big, powerful, I want to be part of the House M. Kothra, who has a presence in every city on the Sword Coast, that's going to be a problem. Your player is going to have access to a lot of resources by birth that the rest of your party, isn't going to be there for. Advanced play, campaign 12, you can have a lot of fun with that. Absolutely. First campaign, second campaign, say no. Make sure it's a lesser house or a house that's not directly in the region, and make sure your player has a reason why they left the noble lifestyle for the rough and rowdy, life of an adventurer. Based on why they did it, that then gives you the ammunitions, the opportunities to seed hooks for their backstory further into the campaign. Disgraced noble, here's a way to reclaim it. Treasure stolen by a family, someone stole a secret heirloom from our family and I have to recover it before anyone knows about it. That's big and direct, kind of like the kidnapped sister thing, kind of like the Knight's Quest thing. Something that you can accept and you'll still have to plan to resolve that somewhere along the line. That's certainly not an overriding quest for the group, but that's an example of, once they finish this, why are they continuing forward? Hopefully, ideally, they're realizing the greater, by this point in the game, yeah, if I leave now, the world's screwed or whatever. So that tends to resolve itself based on where in the campaign you put the finish to their backstory quest. Pirate, same thing. Kind of like a more active armed criminal. How are you level 1 as a pirate? Oh, I was just a dude that sewed the sails and got sick of their crap, so I wanted to go on my own. Enough said. And you really don't need to go any further from there. Maybe if you get near the ocean or if you end up near a maritime location, they can run into their old crew. Maybe if they need to go somewhere, you provide them with that hook based on this pirate's backstory to do a quest to get back in favor so they can access the pirate boat and go where they need to go. Several different tie-ins that can pay off down the line that aren't necessary, that certainly are not overbearing. Now, if Morgana the Black is the pirate queen of the Sword Coast and I'm her you know, unknown son, illegitimate son, and I want to go make my name so I can reclaim my, sit next to her on the throne. That's an example of an overriding player backstory that can become the dominant part of the campaign. You know, notwithstanding, unless you're playing a naval campaign, everyone's pirates, and that's fine. That's where you get back into what I said earlier about setting. Know your setting, know your adventure. That particular story would not work with Lost Mines of Phandelver to begin with. Actually, you could. Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is get stronger, smarter, get some resources. So I'm going to head inland, let things cool down, and go learn how to fight inshore, and then I'll head back out and get my shit. You can do that. You know. What else do we have? A sage. A sage falls into your basic rules, like we talked about with the um, Indiana Jones archaeologist. Thank you. Um, Searching for resource, searching for knowledge, going out to research old tombs, old temples, lost spell book, hidden this, connection to that. Whatever kind of MacGuffin your player wants to come up with in their storyline is perfectly fine, because most of the time the sage background is a support background. They're kind of the inquisitive player wanting to learn. That's really easy to plan the backstory for. You just put some funky runes on the wall once in a while. You let them find an old history book that's, aligned with an interest of theirs. That's one of those kind of, it's really easy to hook those players along because they're going for the flow of the game. The sage typically is not the overriding, my whole purpose and your purpose in existence is to help me find this or learn this. Okay. It can be, but most of the time the players that use that background are willing to, kind of go along with things and kind of let you as a dungeon master provide opportunities for that backstory and that background to pop up. Okay, easy to work with. Sailor, think of a pirate with less combat capability or less negativity. Same thing. Let the player give that. That's not very hard, unless you're in the desert, in the Anarok Desert. 1,800 miles to the east of the Sword Coast. It's not that far. I think it's like 600 miles to the east of the Sword Coast. How'd you get here level 1, bro? If they can explain that to you and you can work with that, Sailor is not a hard background to work with at all. If you're planning on naval exploration, it wouldn't hurt to have someone that's got a sailor, because at least you can kind of MacGuffin in the ability to help sail a boat. So we get down to soldier. Soldier is equal to town guard, town watch, military, whatever. You do a lot of fighter martial classes will take the soldier as well. One of the things that is interesting about this is the military rank. If your players are level 1, they're, and this is where the description can become a problem. Work with your DM to determine which military organization you were part of, how far through the ranks you progressed, and what kind of experience you had during your military career. This is where you're setting your standards for power in your campaigns. Okay? If your soldier background at level 1, you left as a captain, and your player says, I was a captain when I retired and went adventuring at level 1. So you basically reinforced that, moving forward, it has to be captain, major, colonel, lieutenant colonel, general from level 1, 3, 5, so on and so forth. So pay attention to those ranks. Now, by proxy, a city guard is a CR 1/8 to 1/4 creature. They're not very strong. A private in the army is not a level 1 character. Okay, so allow your level 1 to maybe be a corporal or a sergeant, an NCO type rank, and it fits in. Because then if they're dealing with military forces they're familiar with, they have that role play mechanism to a point. Okay, incorporating a soldier's background as far as adventure hooks is not that difficult as well. They're going to be duty bound. Once they take their word for something, they're typically going to go do it. You can also do the good old fashioned conscription. Hey, Sergeant Lawson, hope you've been enjoying yourself these last couple months. Emergency's been detected. You've been called up, and we need you to travel here pronto to take care of this. So all of a sudden you have a diverting adventure hook just based on their background. That's one of those things you talk about. If you want to use your rank as you progress in this game, if your rank's going to matter in this geographic area, then the rank above you is still going to matter. So that's a nice simple. It doesn't. It's not simple, but it is a definitive way to plant adventure hooks for this backstory to either take that character where you need to or take the party where you need to, and still let them feel like they're a soldier or at least a former soldier. Okay. Last one from basic, and hey, that's good. We're able to finish this up in less than an hour. Is going to be the Urkin. Okay, sleight of hand stealth. Almost every rogue ever is going to be an Urkin if they're not a criminal. Those are really good bonuses. Urkins are pretty easy. Street kid, grew up in the gutters, man. Floating orphanage to orphanage, abandoned building to abandoned building. Got enough together to go out and try to do better for myself. Kind of an ambiguous background as far as the player has a lot of latitude. They're going to be limited from being any sort of limiting unless they say I'm an Urkin, but I'm secretly the son of A B C D E F. No, then that makes you a noble or that makes you whatever. There is the potential for a creative player to use the Urkin background to build something very, very, very big. Pay attention to that. But by and large, the Urkin, if they want to role play well, your hooks are nice and simple. Beggars, street kids, anyone that's in a position of disadvantage, being abused or overpowered or taken advantage of, should push the Urkin background player into that point. So that's the list of backgrounds. So let me pop back up and finish this chat up for a few minutes here. Like I said, I kind of went a little bit off track, but I thought it was a good episode, a good exercise to go through all of the basic player handbook backgrounds and talk about how your player can use those for a backstory and how you as a dungeon master can then use those to propel hooks forward. Just to kind of sum things up again, though, and we're going to finish up. The most important thing is to know your background. Yours, the dungeon master. What's your setting? Where are we playing? What are we doing? And for what we've been looking at, we're playing The Lost Mines of Phandelver. The information you need for the module is right here. It talks about the history for the module, what's going on in this particular region. You have your overview. It talks about how to run the module. We talked about that in episode, what was it, 10? I think it was 10, when we were looking at the map keys. And then here you have a quick section that's going to tell you about the Forgotten Realms, about the setting. I'm going to do it's a separate episode on settings because it's a big concept. I think a lot of stuff gets muddied because we don't necessarily discern settings. We'll save that for next time. But this is describing how the world works, what the people, what do the people see? How does it work? What lives here? What are the dangers? So on and on and on and on. This is what you need to know as a DM when you're preparing this module for your group. The history of the area, what is the Forgotten Realms like, and what is the area that we're playing in. Remember, back to the map key episode, the episode before last, if you need more information on your map keys. So, with that in hand, combined with a thorough review of your players' backgrounds and their backstories, you now have plenty of information to generate additional adventure hooks. The only main hook that was provided, the one thing that said adventure hook, is your people meet in Phandalin. Okay? They have to leave Neverwinter, go to Phandalin. From there, it's you, the dungeon master, associating the non-player characters and the locations with specific encounters and events that you then need to push your players towards. Using their backstories can hook them in. Okay? We're going to... I said I was going to end, but I apologize with that. I'm actually not going to end. We're going to do a little bit more here just to talk about these outwriting accounts, these outside locations that we looked at earlier. How do I tie in Agatha's Lair? What can I use for potential for here? The promise of Agatha's Lair holding some unknown riches should propel your criminal, your Urkin, or your spies over there. A sage may want to go find out why there's another wizard over there with a bunch of zombies. A paladin's going to want to go kill the zombies based on their background. A sailor, a pirate, they don't care. They're just here for loot. Yar. Wyvern Tor, orcs. The whole my family was destroyed by enemies, and I need to go fight Everyone, I take orc ears, covers wyvern tor, simple hook to get there. Disappeared caravan goods, probably a bunch of money that got stolen by them. Hey, all of your criminals, all of your spies, all of your urchins are good to go. Maybe this is where one of the clues for the kidnapped daughter is. Maybe there's a part of the MacGuffin that the noble's trying to research that's hidden in Wyvern Tor. Just planting seeds and rumors, and some of that stuff they don't find out till they get there, because one of your other players wants to go to Wyvern Tor to kill orcs. Fine, let's go kill orcs. Hey, this has my family's crest on it. Suddenly your noble's in play. Cool. We did Wyvern Tor. We go to Cragmaw Castle. These dudes have been trading in slaves. What? Here's a list of names. That's spelled wrong, but it's that's my relative's name in Goblin. Where is it going? So you've planted another hook based on the adventure getting either A, using the adventure itself to get your party there, and then B, using moments in the adventure based on your knowledge of the world and your knowledge of your players' backstories to propel their backstory, to bring their backstories into play in various sections. At the risk of going on for too long, that's where I'm going to stop. I just want to give you a couple real quick examples on the printed version versus what we're talking about. But hey, yeah, backstories is a big thing. It's something that you should definitely plan on spending some preparation time on, including your characters, especially if your players have the expectation that their backstories are going to matter as the adventure goes. Their backstory has to be manageable, but it is your responsibility to find points within their backstories and their backgrounds that you can tie into the current and future adventure. Doing that is preparing, knowing your world, knowing your setting, knowing your adventure, knowing what's happening between A, B, and C, so you can say, oh, this would be a good place for the kidnapped person. Oh, this would be a good place to put 1/4 of the broken locket or amulet that they have to find. Whatever MacGuffins that you're needing, use the content that's been given to you within the module in line with their backstories to help their backstories become their current stories. But hey, DM Geezer Jim here. That's all I wanted. I'm going to close out there. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Like, follow, subscribe, all that. I know a lot of this stuff is big, heavy, meaty concepts, but if we don't talk about them, we don't have the discussions, you got to figure them out on your own. So if I can save you 1 or 2 sessions or 10 or 20 sessions of learning the hard way by you listening to me talk for an hour, then we all win, right? But hey, likes, follow, subscribes. Leave me some comments if you have any other questions, if you want anything specific, and I'll definitely get back around to doing it. But take care of yourselves.